Hello, welcome to the third episode of Meet an Immigrant. Thanks for joining us. My name is Jonty, and our guest today is Mirza. Today we are going to talk a little bit about his life, but before that, I want to, welcome you to our show and explain why we're here. Over the, my lifetime, I've enjoyed getting to know people from around the country, around the world, immigrants, everybody, and I've learned so much that I really want to share those experiences with you, the kind of conversations that we have between ourselves. And, I hope even, as we go further and farther into this, we can get even more intimate, use other platforms to get other people involved in the conversation. So, without further ado, I want to introduce you to my friend, Mirza. He is, let me just read his bio. He's done a lot, and I had to edit a lot of things out because he has done so much. But yeah, he was born in Bosnia, raised there until the Bosnian genocide forced him to leave. He lived in Germany for many years and then finally immigrated to the U.S. Currently, he's a postdoctoral researcher and adjunct professor at Syracuse University, Department of Entrepreneurship and Emerging Enterprises at the Whitman School of Management. He's also served as assistant director of the Office of Vice Chancellor for Veteran and Military Affairs. In addition, he's an entrepreneur and involved in many projects and co-founder of the Northside Learning Center. Mirza, welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
Jonty, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. And I hope I can contribute to your mission and objectives and goals of this.
Thank you so much. No, absolutely. I can't wait. We had a nice conversation the other day just to kind of come to understand, his story a little bit better so that we can have a nicer, interview today. But let's get started. Mirza, tell me a little bit about where you were born and raised.
As you mentioned previously, born and raised in Bosnia, a small town called Vlasenica, which is east part of Bosnia, maybe like an hour and a half away from Sarajevo, 60 miles, the capital, and also close to Srebrenica, which I'm sure many people have heard, unfortunately, because of the genocide. And so I was born and raised there and left when I was about 12, 13 years old.
So tell me a little bit about how was life there? I mean, this is a small town. Was it rural? Were your family farmers? Like what how did you grow up?
It's a town. So it's European small town. So it is considered a city for our standards, because that was a city. Had a mayor, had a city hall, had all infrastructure that the city has. Life was great. Life was really good. I would say it's the best years of my life, because I was surrounded by family. I lived in a street where I had a grandmother there, one aunt, another uncle, three uncles actually living next to each other. Wow. A lot of great neighbors, friends. So all my childhood memories were beautiful till the war, really.
Yeah. And let's see. So we know that the war against Bosnia happened in 1992, right? The Serbian war against Bosnia. And before that, Serbia was already involved in fighting in Croatia. Okay. So were you guys worried, as the war was kind of raging in Croatia, were you worried things were going to kind of spill over to Bosnia?
Again, I was young, but I remember my parents. So there was, as you can see, there was a tension in the air. There, people were, didn't know what's going to happen. But also a lot of people did not believe it can happen. Like, why would it happen? Because they grew up with everybody, and they grew up under this umbrella of brotherhood and unity, the communist brotherhood and unity. And really, my dad had as many, Eastern Orthodox friends as Muslim friends. Because in my town, we only had Muslims and Eastern Orthodox. We had, a few maybe Jews and few Catholics, but 99% was Muslim and Eastern Orthodox.
Okay.
And until then, really, everybody was Bosnian or Yugoslavian. And it was that propaganda that started in the late 80s from Milosevic, that each Eastern Orthodox in the Balkans is Serbian or in former Yugoslavia, that has started creating divisions, unfortunately. And, again, till the last day, my dad did not believe it. Like, why? I have not done anything to them. Like, I've been good. I grew up with them. I went to the weddings. I went to the, we spent Easter together, eat together. We did all these things together.
Wow.
Why?
Yeah, I know. Like I even heard there was like intermarriage between the different groups, so did you feel that amongst the people? Did you feel like it was more of a, was it the government trying to convince the people, or were there already fractures and the people did have tension amongst each other? I mean, I know you were young back then, but like in these conversations maybe you had with your parents later on, did they start feeling like, well, neighbors started treating us differently, or did everything seem perfectly fine right up until the very end?
There was this emergence of Slobodan Milosevic as he came, an emergence of Great Serbia, that you can see people more and more, and especially when they get drunk, right? That's when you when they let it out and say, well, you guys are going to kill us, you're going to do this. All these stories are like, man, what kind of fairy tales are you talking about? But it was these stories that when they get drunk, that they spill out in terms of what's going on in the inner circles that we are not part of, and in terms of preparing it. So that division has been going, and that propaganda that has been going on since 1986, right, has kind of, led to that point. And of course, when they started doing that stuff, you had then Croatia starting, well, if you're going to be Serbian, you're going to be Croatian. And eventually the same thing that happened in Bosnia. That's why in 1991, right, we went for the independence and actually became independent in 92. U.S. was one of the first countries, actually first country, U.S., Austria, and for other ones that recognized Bosnia as an independent country.
Wow. That's really
avoid being under the fascist regime of Slobodan Milosevic that has emerged and has taken over in Serbia.
Wow. So up until that point, you guys, the Bosnians, your family, you felt a part of the society. You felt integrated. You were ethnically the same, right? I mean,
ethnically we all same. And unfortunately, because of the propaganda of the I call them fascist propaganda of fascists from the Serbian side, but also fascists from the Croatian side, they made the Bosnian Catholics and Bosnian Eastern Orthodox believe that if you're Catholic, you are Croatian, which does not make sense. Being Croatian is ethnic group. It's also not nationality. I have friends who are both Muslim and Eastern Orthodox who are Croatian. So they're not. It's only in Bosnia they have created this as a plan to really convince them that they are not Bosnians, so they can come in and divide the country and do the havoc that they have committed there.
That's such a shame. That's really such a shame. And now you mentioned that right up until the end, your father really couldn't believe this was happening. So what convinced him? What changed his mind? And how did it happen so suddenly?
I don't think convinced him. My mom convinced him just to leave the town and bring us somewhere else. So it was during Eid, first day of Eid, which is the Islamic end of Ramadan celebration. I think it was that, I forget which Eid, but it was one of the Eids when they started really cleansing the eastern Bosnia. Wow. And my dad was in disbelief, and even there was large number of Serbs in my hometown. Nobody told anybody that what's going to happen. Nobody told, everybody was in denial. Basically, they were lying, but they all took their families away. And few people told my dad, don't worry, when we come in here, when we take over, we're just going to change. It's going to be big Serbia. Nothing, maybe a couple hats will roll, but nothing's going to happen. Right? Don't worry, but you'll be fine. Nobody told him. Nobody told him anything to leave. I think there's only one person in the whole town of 15,000 people that heard from one of his friends says, leave. Wow. And there's only like a handful of people who were saved from the neighbors, because the neighbors were the ones who really killing, raping, and running the concentration camp. So my dad's family, again, city, right, small town, city. In that town, majority of the fascists, Serbian fascists who were in the fascists during World War II, switched sides at the end of the war and joined communists and became powerful. You could not tell anything that what they did and committed in the Second World War. So my grandmother's brother, so my father's uncle, was actually killed by a neighbor, Serbian neighbor. He was a fascist, the Serbian neighbor. They were also roommates at the university. But my grandmother's brother was actually in the Communist Partisan, which became the Tito's party later on. He killed him. and she was not allowed to say anything that the guy killed. He became very powerful later in politics, because if she said anything, he could bring two witnesses, say, you saying something against me, I'm in the party, I've been always this and that. She goes to jail. And that happened to a lot of people that try to bring people to justice. They brought false witnesses and were put in jail.
So I was really surprised. I want to kind of like summarize here. So there's an interesting phenomenon. So you're saying there was already these ethnic tensions and ethnic cleansing happening during World War II, which is something I didn't know about. So you're saying this was happening?
Yeah, it was taking place. So when anybody tried to ask my grandmother, what happened to your brother? What happened to anything? She said, God forbid ever happens again, don't ask. She was afraid to talk about it. My mother, who grew up in a village, her father, her family was talking about all these atrocities that were taking place during World War II. So she didn't trust. And then really when things were starting to happening, she saw what's happening. Everybody's leaving. She sees 50 miles, another town is burning. We hear people are being ethnically cleansed, killed just because, they're Muslim, not because they're in the party, not because they have certain professions, not because they look funny. That's it. You have a certain name, you're being killed. And basically she told him, take me off. You want to leave, you want to stay, but take me off. So he finally was like, okay, I'll take you to another friend's house on the border with Croatia, and I'll come back tomorrow. And really, it was then when we were escaping that he realized what's going on and kind of changed his mindset when he saw really what took place and when he heard firsthand information.
So yeah, just to clarify, so it seems like you explained to me earlier that in the city, those people who lived in the city, they couldn't discuss what happened prior and during World War II, right? There was always this fear that those powerful communist officials would basically, or former fascist, now communist officials would take retribution if the truth came out. Whereas your mother, so that was your father's situation, but whereas your mother living in the village, they had a little bit more freedom. There wasn't that oversight. They could speak about the atrocities that happened. So when it was happening again, she kind of caught it early, right? She's like, look, this is happening. This is real. Don't be in denial, right? Okay. And so now what did your father experience on the way out? Did he see some of the atrocities? Did you guys witness some of this stuff?
Oh, we actually had to go through there were soldiers on the street heading barricades. So we were going through it. They stopped us. Like he was frozen. And the guy was like, where are you guys going? Like, if you all leave, who are you going to fight with? And my dad, out of fear, was like, look, I'm just bringing my kids and family to, it's called Bosanski Shamac. I'll be back tomorrow. And then the guy's like, okay, let him through. And it was actually
threatening him. Yeah, who we're going to kill if you're gone, right? Wow. Yeah, that's when it sunk in. So it seems like you didn't plan this. There wasn't, you didn't pack up the car. You didn't have money. You didn't sell the house.
We packed because they told him it's going to take 3 days to take over the power. We packed 3 days. He didn't pack. He just put whatever he had on him, and that's how we got out.
Wow.
And the same night as we arrived in that Shamac, and Bosanski Shamac is on River Sava, on the border with Croatia. Not far from Serbia, actually. And those guys were completely cut off the Bosnian media. They were listening only to Serbian media. So they had no idea what was going on in East Bosnia. It was ethnically cleansed. So we came in, they didn't believe us. Until that night, another town not far from that also became attacked, and people were killed and were coming and telling what was going on. That's when everybody started panicking. And again, it's a shock. Why would you do it to me?
I know.
What did I do? I mean, it's...
Wow. So where did you guys go? Where did you end up going? To that relative's house, or what?
We ended up going to my mother's cousin.
Okay.
Great uncle. How would you say that in English? But we ended up going to him. He lives in Croatia, city called Varaždin, which is about 45 minutes from the capital, Zagreb. We spent the summer there, and then the summer 1992, my mom signed us up to go with a Red Cross convoy to Germany. Germany was accepting refugees, so about 3,000 people in the convoy went that day. And I remember traveling for 2 days and came to a town called Osnabrück. And
so you drove that the whole way?
No, we went in train.
Train
convoy, yeah.
Wow.
Packed refugees.
Wow.
Interesting experience, but it was.
And what happened to your family? Because you said you grew up with your grandma and your aunts, and what happened to all of them?
On my father's side, luckily everybody was able to get out of our hometown. A lot of them stayed in Tuzla, which was never attacked. I was attacked, but was never really was able to stay free.
Okay.
We went to the capital under the siege, and then mother's side, a lot of them actually stayed and escaped to Srebrenica, in East Bosnia. So the ones from father's side, most of them, all of them survived, like the closer family. And unfortunately, in Srebrenica, according to my grandmother, who also survived it, we lost more than 60 men, close, like first, second, third generation.
So how did they do this? Like, we heard the stories in, Nazi Germany about the concentration camps and the gas chambers. So what exactly were the Serb army doing to you guys? Like was this just putting you in camp and you died of natural causes? Was there, were they just shooting you and putting you in mass graves? Like what happened?
It was a mass execution from the witnesses, because there were people, they would just put people and then everybody starts shooting and miraculously, there were a few people who have survived and became witnesses. And unfortunately, we don't hear their voices. It's very sad that you don't hear their voices, but those guys have survived and witnessed what was going on. And that's how they were also able to identify these mass graves that are still being uncovered. So that's what they did, a separate men and women. A group of men actually created a convoy and went through the woods trying to get to the free zone in Bosnia. And good number of them have survived, and a lot of them were also killed on the way there because they knew what those paths were and were waiting for them. And
so you're saying the soldiers were hunting them down as the civilians were running away?
Yeah, and the problem was a lot of them did not have weapons because the international society made Srebrenica the United Nations protected zone, and to be protected zone, they took away the weapons, they had to give up the weapons. So I mean, I'm not going to go into politics, but it's really, it looks like a international setup to disarm the guys and then allowed the Ratko Mladic and the Serbian Chetniks, that's how we call them, fascists, to get in and just go back wild.
No. I mean, honestly, that's really sad. I definitely love to hear the stories. I mean, I think have there been members of the community who are trying to record these stories?
We have an effort actually in North America and overall diaspora. We have efforts. So every July 11th, that's the day we always do commemoration. There's always programming, and as a matter of fact, I've been assisting a group of youth here, Bosnian Americans, who are actually organizing the first time. We call it the Peace March. They're organizing a trip from New York to Sarajevo. People have the chance to see a little bit Bosnia, get some cultural experiences for 4 days. And then the fifth day, they're going to go to Tuzla and actually walk that march, that the convoy, the freedom self. They're going to walk through that and kind of see what has experiencing. And then we're going to go to the commemoration on the July 11th. And that march takes place every year now. So people all over the world are coming to really remember what was going on. So for us to raise awareness also here, we're taking, the goal is to take a group of 40 this year. And if you want to know more about it, it's called Bay Foundation.
Yeah, we'll get to that again. But I want to ask you, how long did that hike take? Like, I mean, if I decide to go, I mean, how long would
It's 3 days. It's 3 days.
3 days. So what do you do? Do people camp? They bring kind of equipment, they camp out?
They're the whole organization that is called March Mira, with March of Peace. They're organizing tents, the lodging, the food, everything is there.
Wow.
We're organizing also speakers. There will be events on the way there, and it's
that's great. Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that later. I think that's a really cool thing. That we need to keep this alive because, unfortunately, history has this tendency to repeat itself. I mean, Imad was the first person I interviewed. He talked about the genocide in Cambodia, right? And how the rhetoric that the leader used to gain power and what happened afterwards. And you see these parallels, and whether it's Bosnia or Cambodia or whether it was what happened in Nazi Germany, just history repeats itself. And, a lot of us end up kind of in denial, like your father. It's like, no, this wouldn't have happened. We didn't do anything. Why would somebody want to hurt us, right? And unfortunately, there are people out there, and I think we need to be aware of history in order to make sure that it doesn't repeat itself again.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons my dad was in denial, because he did not know the history. He did not know that since 1872 there were 10 genocides on Bosniaks in the Balkans. He had no idea, because it was, again, it's a communist machinery, and they write the history. As you know, the winners write the history.
The winners write the history. I know. Somebody was just asking. I want to talk about your trip to Germany, but before, Ali asks, how different was the climate or popular attitudes in larger cosmopolitan centers like Belgrade or Sarajevo, Zagreb in the early 1990s compared with the smaller towns and villages around the former Yugoslavia? So was there a difference in the people, the mentality of the people? Large cities, small town. You mentioned how your mother had a different experience growing up than your father. I mean, how about others and their attitude towards Bosnians?
A lot of the cities in Bosnia, or larger cities, actually were growing because of the influx of the rural population, right, through education and so on. So even if you look, Sarajevo has boomed, and in the last 100 years, 3 mayors in Sarajevo were from my hometown, which is a small town, right? So a lot of people were moving for opportunities, just like in America, what they're doing. And overall, there was, I don't know if that answers the question, but...
Well, I think he was wondering, among the Croatians and especially the Serbians, what was their attitude towards the Bosnians? Was there a difference between the cities versus the country? I mean, just like what's happening here, right? I mean, there's sometimes we looked at these demographics. I don't know if that played a role in Bosnia or not.
Unfortunately, there was nothing changed in terms of politics. So I did not see or experience any support. Unfortunately, a lot of our artists, our famous people, movie makers, actors, people who were influential, who were Serbian or Eastern Orthodox, left for Belgrade and were considered really traitors, because they left and it seems like they knew what's going to happen. And a lot of them also stayed in Sarajevo. So Sarajevo, really Bosnia, and unfortunately, what they're trying to make this now, it's a religious thing. It's not a religious thing. It's a Bosnian against these fascists from Serbia and against fascists from Croatia. Not Bosnia against Croatia or Muslims against Christians or Eastern Orthodox. That's what they're trying to make it, right? But overall, if you look at Sarajevo, unfortunately, after the war, a lot of people have left, and the things have been created now that you have majority of Sarajevo is a Muslim, majority of Banja Luka, which used to be all Muslim, majority Muslim, now it's Eastern Orthodox. Another town like Tuzla has actually maintained its multinationality or pluralist society. So Bosnia, it's the first president of Bosnia, the whole agenda was to maintain Bosnia, multi-ethnic Bosnia. Right, and that's what we were fighting against. That has to be clear, because they're trying to rewrite it to say this was a religious thing. It was not a religious thing. It was fascists from Serbia trying to make big Serbia, ethnically cleanse everybody who's not Serbian, and kind of destroy the multi-ethnic Republic of Bosnia.
Yeah, but so you did see that difference. You've noticed that change over time. Like, whereas things were definitely much more integrated before, now there's this division along religious and ethnic lines. Is that what you're saying?
There is, and when I go to Sarajevo, I still see the diversity. They can say whatever they want to say. I don't see any. I don't feel uncomfortable, because you don't know who I am on the street. I never feel uncomfortable because I'm still foreigner and stranger. However, if I go to the occupied territory, if I go to my hometown, I feel threatened, because people are working with and glorifying war criminals. Everywhere war criminals are glorified. Even my hometown, the mayor he was running a unit that was ethnically cleansing East Bosnia, my hometown. He is on the list of wanted war criminals and is waiting to be prosecuted, but he's still in power. So how can you feel safe when you have these guys and who openly go and deny genocides and no, never happened? Be protecting,
So, unlike what happened in Nazi Germany, I remember the trials, like Milosevic, right, faced the International Tribunal. Yeah. And what was his sentence?
He died.
He died.
So died.
Sentenced to death?
Karadzic was sentenced. Yes, Karadzic was sentenced. Midol, there's plenty of
So do
evidence.
you guys feel like, okay, justice was served? Those people who were responsible were punished, and now you're saying you don't feel safe back home. So I guess
Part of the justice has been served, but the fact that they're still being glorified, the fact that you go there and see the streets are being named after them, the fact that they're still trying to separate or divide Bosnia, the fact that they still see us enemies, the still fact that I'm not welcome, it means that justice has not been served. And as long as these guys are enabled, and they are enabled by the Western policies, these things are going to continue, unfortunately.
Wow. Okay. So I think I have a better picture of what's going on. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. So tell me about the trip to Germany now. So you jumped on a train. How long was the train ride to Germany then?
2 days.
2 days. Wow.
It was a slow train.
It wasn't those really fast.
Like 10 hours where we were, but it was because I think he stopped several times, getting more people on the way.
Okay.
Maybe it felt too long for me as a teenager.
That might also be a factor. I remember that too. As road trips seemed like ridiculously long, even if they were only 4 or 5 hours. But 2 days is a long time. I will agree with you there.
They just brought us all together in a former British military base, and out of there they tried to place people with families or independent living and stuff. So we were there about 3 months. On October 21st, I remember 1992. We were placed in a small town called Neunkirchen, which is about, I would say, 50 miles south of Bremen, who knows Germany, and 20 miles north of Osnabrück. And we were placed in an apartment that was run and owned by a clinic for alcohol substance abuse, individuals who have alcohol substance abuse. And it was run by St. Franciscus of Assisi nuns. So they were our hosts when we moved there. So very, very welcoming. After everything was going on, it was finally a safe environment that we felt safe, and allowed us a little bit really to get some peace. But with everything was going on in Bosnia, not able to connect with family, don't know who's alive, who's not alive, what's going. We were really clueless for, I would say, at least 3, 4, 5 months, until we finally were able to connect with my dad's cousin, who was working for the telecommunication services, and was able to get on the phone and tell us what was going on, and that everybody at that time was alive.
Wow. I know that must have been a really scary time, not knowing what happened to your family, hoping they made it, hoping they found some safety. Oh my God. So tell me about Germany then. What do you remember from this time? Like general impressions, stories?
I'd say overall, my memories of Germany are really fond memories, beautiful memories of Germany and the German people. I really had a good, of course, there was a struggle as a foreigner, as somebody who comes into new society, who's torn out of my own society, of my own life, out of family, without any support. It was very difficult emotionally in the first few years. But once we learned German, once we started getting to know people and were able really to connect with the community, it was great experience. A lot of support. The nuns were great. They would help us also send aid to Bosnia. People also in the community were helping out. They looked out for us, I can say, because it's a small town. I think 6,000 people. Again, small town, a little bit smaller than my hometown in Bosnia. But overall, was great experience. Education was also really good. I've been able to advance through all the various degrees as a teenager, and finally graduate from gymnasium, which is kind of junior level college.
Okay.
I had this 13 years.
Wow.
So that also enabled me kind of to come here and study, open a lot of doors for me.
So how many years did you spend in Germany? You said
I spent all my teenage years, 7 years, from 15 till 19. And actually we came on October 21st, 1992, and we left and landed in New York City on October 21st, 1999.
Wow. 7 years. Beautiful. So tell me, you shared a nice story with me, and I'd like you to share that with everyone else about, kind of the meals that they shared with you and you shared with them. I think that was really cute, and kind of Talks about some of that warmth that you felt in Germany, that, you know, how they made you feel welcome.
So we came to the apartment. They were like, "Don't worry, we'll take care of you, everything." So they cooked for us, made food for us, because the clinic, it's literally, we were on the campus of the clinic. In the clinic, they had food, and they would bring us breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And not only did they bring always like they were bringing for 10 people. It's only me, my mom, dad, and my sister, my parents, my sister, and myself. But the food was really very bland. A lot of potatoes. I mean, I love Germans, but that's the food, right? And then I would say that the tasty food that was there, we could not eat because it's pork, like bratwurst and that stuff. So eventually Ramadan came, so we were able to tell them, look, we're gonna let us cook our own meals, because we have different times and we're doing it. And actually, that's when we started inviting the nuns over for iftar, which is the breaking of the fast. And it really brought us all together, breaking the bread, and they enjoyed my dad's smoked meat, because we do smoked meat, and then also he loves the pear brandy. He used to drink that, and even though it was illegal to drink on that campus, one of the nuns would come and they would cheer together. So he can tell a lot of stories what she did, and
yeah, let's not reveal too much about the Franciscan nuns.
Unfortunately, they all passed away, so they won't get in trouble. But
okay.
they did these things, and it was like small family, really. And then he would usually always take her to her families from Schwarzwald, which is the south of Germany, to vacation, bring her back, and they consider us family. We consider them family as well. So, because every time they had guests or the event summit, they brought us along or brought the guests here to introduce us, the Bosnian family that lives with them. That's
nice. I was just looking, somebody asked the question, Ali asked the question, do Bosnians in Germany and the USA assimilate differently? I'm assuming he means do Bosnians, when they integrate into Germany versus USA, is there a different process? And what did you notice about the difference between those two countries?
So for me, it was not difficult to integrate neither in Germany nor America. And I think this is because I'm European, and a lot of people have misperceptions about former Yugoslavia, but I think economically, really, we were kind of a little bit lagging behind Germany, but we were there. We had a lot of guest workers from Bosnia or former Yugoslavia who worked in Germany. So a lot of that was, whatever innovation was coming out in Germany, we had it also in Bosnia. So integrating into lifestyle, it was not really difficult. The biggest integration difficulty was the language. However, they provided, just like they're providing here, ESL or ELA, they provided also German for second language speakers. For me, I had to skip English so I can take German, a second language, to learn German. So I never really learned English in school in Germany. I was failing, and eventually when I came to high school, I had to pick a language. They didn't have English beginners. They only had French for beginners. So I actually learned French in high school, not English. So when I came here, I didn't speak a word of English. So I had to go to a refugee program and learn English. So in terms of that, I don't know if it answers the question, integration, but we didn't have difficulty really integrating. Germany is all about discipline, versus here it was less about discipline, at least my experience.
Yeah, the cultural difference between two nations. Well, let me share this. This might answer his question because my father also lived in Germany. He spent some time in Germany, a year or two before he came to the US, and he loved his time there as well, and so, and I also have another, his close friend who lived there in Germany with him, and he absolutely loves Germany. He's like, I was having a conversation with him years back, and he was like, yeah, my one regret is I didn't stay in Germany. I wish I stayed in Germany. And, whether it's the welcomeness, like they had good friends that they knew, just how things are done there, with precision, with, done well. The social support network that the society offers to its people. I think they really enjoy that. But on the other hand, you also hear these other stories, like in the news, how the Turkish community doesn't feel welcome, and, all these kind of riots between the Turks and the Germans. So, those are two very different stories. You had a good experience. I know my father and his friend had a very good experience, but then you hear about these riots, like, is it a tale of two Germanys? What's happening here?
I think in academia, we have this most favorite answer. Academia depends, right? It depends on experiences, depends where you end up being. It depends also on your attitudes to the environment. luck also where you actually end up being and who you can end up working with. But one thing I usually always say that from my experiences, when it comes to going back to Ali's question about Germany and America, the Germans dream about America. That's the promised land. Maybe they watch too many Hollywood movies. I don't know what it is. But when I came here, I realized that what they were dreaming actually is Germany. So they were just projecting, as you and I talked the other day, John, that they have these high aspirations of what a good life should be or how life should be, that they see in America. But it's really, I've seen it more there. However, now that we talk about social, we talk about now, if you want to talk about entrepreneurship, I prefer America, because in Germany, there's so many limitations as a refugee. But my dad tried to get a job, right? And this is also these policies that they're having, that they're blaming the refugees or immigrants taking away the jobs. When my dad tried to get a job, when a job opens, first they ask a German, does he or she wants a job? If they say no, then they go to European Union folks, anybody from European. Then they go to the German Russians immigrants, because they bringing in Germans who stayed in Russia, and they bring them back. Fourth, they're asking asylum seekers if they want a job, and then the refugees, right? And the only job my dad was able to get was a part-time job, because nobody wanted a job. He was maintenance at a large kind of shopping mall, which end up actually being really good for us and for the family, as well as for the owner of the mall. That created a great bond with this person. But here, we came here, man. You want to open a job, you want to work 24 hours, go ahead, man. There's no limitations, right? So Germany is still strict. Like, for example, that mall where my dad worked, it closes. They had to have certain hours operation. One Saturday, the guy worked 2 minutes after it was supposed to be closed. He got a $10,000 fine.
Wow.
Who cares? Just business, it's fine, right? Unless you want to, you might get a fine if you serve alcohol at 10:50, right? You have to wait till 11. But other than that, there's really, we have a lot of freedom when it comes to economy here.
Good point. No, and so it seems like you guys really enjoyed Germany. So why did you leave?
Not Germany, but the German politicians did not want us, and I think also the Bosnian president realized that in order to rebuild the country, he needs to bring people back. And one of the strategies for breaking up Bosnia was also to kill people, but also move people outside of Bosnia. So in order to prevent that, the goal was to bring as many as he could back. And then the German government, some actually allowed people to stay. The state we were did not allow. So we had to leave, and there was choice going back to Bosnia or trying to stay. Maybe I could have stayed behind and studied in Germany. I was accepted actually to university to study.
Wow.
We had one year left for my high school. So in order to stay and finish the high school, we were recommended to apply for America, because the immigration process takes about a year to get to America. And that's what we did. And eventually when I graduated, we were invited for the interview to go to America. And my dad and I were against America. My sister and my mom were for America. Seems like women always win, right? And we talked about, and it's like, okay, what are we gonna do? They can go back to Bosnia. Dad was a general contractor. He could easily, made fortune when he went back to Bosnia. But then we were separated. Or we go back and he will be living in a ghetto, because Bosnia was ghetto till recently, really. Or we can go to America, get a American passport, be a global citizen, and get the American higher education, which is praised worldwide, right?
Yeah.
And when we put everything on the paper, we decided, okay, let's go finish school, get the passport, and move back either to Germany or Bosnia after 5 years.
I guess that plan didn't happen, huh? That didn't work out.
No, one of the guys
America just sucks you in, right? And just won't let you go.
Yeah, one of the guys compared America to how you call it, the living sand? How you call it?
What is that? Oh, quicksand. Quicksand?
The more it tries to get out, it pulls you more in. So it's
it's like The Godfather, right? Every time I try to get out, they just pull me back in. All right. So, okay, you come to the US, you land in New York. What do you guys do? Like, do you have a plan? Did you know what you were going to do? Where are you going to go?
So actually we had they ask us where we want to go. So usually I try to place you if you have any family. My mom had a cousin here in Syracuse. She told us it was a great school, and interestingly, the nuns, the St. Francis of Assisi nuns, the headquarters is in Springfield, Illinois, right? From Simpsons. I'm just kidding. Springfield, Illinois. So they offered also to come and live with them, right?
Oh, wow.
And we made a decision. That's great. We don't know anything about Springfield, Illinois, except from Simpsons. And I realized later there's a lot of Springfields in America. To be close to family, because we heard also there's a great university, Syracuse University here.
Yeah.
And my goal was to study medicine, so let's go to Syracuse. I didn't even know how to say Syracuse. We were interviewed to come here, right? You have to go to interview. So we were there. Before us was some family, I think Roma family, somewhere from Balkan. Spent 45 minutes in the interview and came out crying with the night. And we heard about terrible stories, what happens in those interviews. And then we walk in after these guys with the night, nice guy. My dad introduced everybody and then introduced himself, says, this is my wife and these are her kids, right? And the guy looks at, aren't they your kids? I was like, yes. So he realized he looks at the paperwork, says, where you guys want to go? And I was like, we want to go to Syracuse. He was like, it's Syracuse, not Syracuse. And if you say Syracuse, you're going to go to America. And it was like, Syracuse. Literally, it was like, welcome to America. That was our interview.
He just had to pronounce Syracuse. I love that. That almost seems cruel too, honestly, if he couldn't get it. Oh God. Well, thank God. Things turned out okay. Your father pulled it out.
Syracuse. I'm here now and even speak English, believe it or not. It's okay.
And so what happened? You came up to Syracuse, I assumed, right? Soon after you landed in New York, and then started learning English. How did you even find a place to live?
Well, we came through Red Cross, the Catholic youth organization. So they organized us. They gave us a sponsor, a former retired professor, Bob Belch, and his lovely wife, late Bob Belch and Betty. They were very helpful. They helped us together with the case manager get an apartment, settle us in. And it was really Bob who took us to the Onondaga Community College here to get us enrolled. Because unfortunately, and this is the thing also, the experience of the refugee resettlement program is not the best. When we came here, my dad's dream was to start a business. And, when we went to this interview, these guys, what do you want to do? He says, I want to start a business. And the Bosnian guy who's translating first laughs at him and then translates to the other people. And they're all like cynically laughing at him. Look at him. If it was that easy, everybody would start a business, even us. So it completely shut him down that you cannot start a business.
Oh, man.
But here we are, right? With this perception, America, the land of the dreams. Yeah. And what they did end up actually putting him in a factory to work for like miserable salary or hourly rate. We got depressed, and it's very depressing to go from being very successful, like civil engineer, haven't made it, like materialistically have achieved everything by age 25, to being then said, okay, you're gonna do the worst job you can get so you can pay your bills. Why? So this guy who does the refugee resettlement program, because he can say after 90 days, I have a case closure, I succeeded. It's just numbers game. Unfortunately, that's what they're doing oftentimes. And by working with the refugees here, I realized really how these things work. And there's a lot of rooms for improvements. However, nobody wants to change. So you got to be the change you want to see sometimes.
Well, and I think that's, the Northside, was it Northside Development Center?
Yes.
Is that the reason you started that? You helped start
that's one of the reasons, actually, because Syracuse accepted between 2000 and 2005, Syracuse accepted 2,000 refugees. It was a hub zone for refugees. Between 2006 and 2009, they accepted 5,000 refugees with the same infrastructure. Okay, wow. They did not change infrastructure. So there was a huge waiting line that put all these refugees coming from Burma, coming from Somalia, coming from Iraq, Afghanistan on the north side, which is highest crime rate, worst neighborhood when it comes to statistics, economically depressed one of the economically most depressed neighborhood. And what happened, the kids were being beaten up. They were being there's more to it. However, we talked to them and they were like, look, we need our kids to be safe. They cried. People come to us, Burmese community came to crying, save our kids. Why they're being beaten up on the streets? The parents work 2 jobs, or if they have evening classes, they cannot go because they have kids. They cannot leave the kids because they go on the street, they get beaten up. So we realized, okay, if you're gonna educate them, help them, we have to educate the parents. We're gonna teach them English, and at the same time bring the children with them so we can help them with homework assistance. And that was the idea of the Northside Learning Center. And we started the first day we opened the door, 150 people showed up.
Wow.
150 people showed up. And then talking about school district and what's going on, unfortunately, people come here, tell you all these white lies, beautiful lies they're going to do and assist you, and then they go and replicate the same program in the library right next to you. How many people show 10, 15? Why? Because they don't have the credibility, right? Because we brought refugees to help refugees. We brought immigrants to help immigrants. We brought educators with PhD, right? The leader, Yusuf Asol, Dr. Yusuf Asol. Idea of how do you teach this place, because his focus was on disability, work disability. So he knew how to create an inclusive environment, not only if you have disability, but also, not speaking the language is disabling in some shape or form. So that's what we created. And, thank God so far we've been doing great. We were able to expand. We bought a whole campus and really serving the greater community.
That's incredible, man.
Leadership has recognized, like the mayor of Syracuse has been partaking in several initiatives and supporting us, definitely. Unfortunately, the educators, the people who have the money, are not really very helpful.
Well, you did an awesome thing. You did an incredible thing. God bless you, man. This is, it's powerful, right? That immigrants came here, you struggled, and you're like, you know what? I don't want somebody else to struggle like we struggled. Let's make it easier for them, right? And you understood their pain, and you solved a problem. You filled a need, which is also very entrepreneurial, actually. And speaking of entrepreneurship, I think he's very emotionally invested in your father now. He wants to know, was he able to start his business? Was he able to? He was. Awesome.
Yeah, we were able, actually. I didn't know anything really about business. My goal was to go to medical school when I came here, and my dad didn't speak English because they put him straight to work in the factory. And actually, even the factory, he took time to learn English. So he learned English, not really like myself, but he still communicated. And he was getting very depressed in the factory he was working. He was building caskets. It was Marcello's casket company. John F. Kennedy was buried in that casket, but it's not helping my dad because he's working around the casket all day and driving himself crazy. So he made a decision that next Monday, so today is Friday, he made the decision he's going to go to work today, and next week Monday he's going to give a 2-week notice and he's going to start doing handyman services, construction work. He goes to work at 3 o'clock. He comes back 3:30. He's like, what's going on? Says company was sold. I got, how you call the money?
Severance, like a severance package.
Severance. It was a little bit of money. For severance, he's like, okay, the prayers were answered. So he went, bought a S10 truck, used S10 truck, some tools, and we started doing handyman remodeling services. Wow. And then from there, actually then improved and started flipping homes. And now we came to the point that we didn't do any work for other people. We're just doing work for ourselves. And now he's still going strong, 66.
Wow.
He's retired, but he's still working 100 hours, 100 miles per hour.
Wow.
And still have properties.
So he achieved his American dream in the end, huh?
He achieved his goal was really to enable his kids to finish college.
And
right? That was his biggest goal. That was his goal. He achieved that long time ago.
That's great. What else? Now, when you settled in Syracuse, is there a Bosnian community you were able to kind of, rely on that helped you kind of assimilate, integrate into the community? Or were you just by yourself?
We have about, this is the number here. I don't know if it's confirmed, but it's about 2,000 Bosnians live in Syracuse. And we're also fortunate to be close to Utica, New York, which has about 5,000 Bosnians, or 10% of Utica population is Bosnians. So I was able to really quickly integrate in the Bosnian community and society. And then going to Syracuse University, there were also Bosnian students here. But I love Syracuse because I was able to connect not only with Bosnians, I was able even to meet this guy, Janti. I don't know if you heard about him. And other cool people from various countries. and culture.
I'm realizing I met some really cool people in Syracuse, it's incredible, the diversity there, really. Imad, this Cambodian refugee, so many friends, so many interesting backgrounds in one little place in upstate New York. It was really interesting. It was really great. And that's what I want to ask you about. So you have this interesting perspective. You spent, you grew up in Bosnia, you spent, 7 years in Germany, and then you came to America. Now look, when you first, you kind of went into a little bit, the difference between America and Europe. What struck you in those early days when you first came here, the first year or two? What struck you about America that was different from, Bosnia or Germany?
I think the welfare system here struck me a lot. The welfare, like having people that are on the street begging, dying.
So you didn't see that in Germany or Bosnia?
I mean, not saying that there's no those things.
Yeah,
the welfare system is much better. I did not see poverty. I was very shocked because they put us in the worst part of the town, and you go to economically depressed areas, and I was in disbelief. And my sister, I remember her comment was like, I feel like they put us back in time when we came from Germany. Because literally, like even in my hometown in Germany, simple things, power grids, power lines. You don't see that everything is underground. Everything is, you don't see those things. Here you comes like, my God, this was in the 70s. What's happening? And not only in like economically depressed areas, everywhere. So there was this huge contrast that you see. And then of course you're coming here with watching too many Hollywood movies that you think
America's, yeah.
Yeah, that was one thing that really struck us. And also in New York, when we came, we always thought that the Germans were, had obesity issues, which not really. Now I think they're not really obese. They just have extra few pounds till they came to New York. And so it was like, what's going on here? That was also this, because in Bosnia, most people were skinny. You go to Germany, maybe they have extra 5-10 pounds, and you think, oh, look at these guys. But then you come here, people have like 50, 100 pounds extra. What is this? Well, those were some of the cultural shocks we had. Actually, my mom had a heart attack due to cultural shock.
Seriously?
Because really, we went to refugee school. It was like 7-8 days when we were here, and basic experiences in the apartment that we experienced. Right, apartments, the wooden structures here. In Bosnia, everything is concrete, brick and mortar. Everything. Okay. Germany, everything's brick and mortar. Same architectural style and design. Yeah, everything is made from wood. So you hear the neighbor walking upstairs, you hear the neighbor downstairs, you hear when they go to the restroom, you literally hear everything. So all these things and then you go on a bus, and the bus takes you to downtown, and people telling you like, be careful, you might get mobbed, you might get this. And Syracuse was actually really bad. I remember when we came here, and in Europe, everybody wants to be in the downtown, in the city, and you go on the weekends after hours. It's very vivid, right? Here we went on Saturday, it was dead. It was a ghost town.
Yeah.
Windows boarded with the ply. Was like, what is this? It was a huge shock. So, wow. And then I don't know what happened to her, but she was out and went, and the doctor was like, it's cultural shock.
Wow. Well, that's really sad. But
and again, I'm at the other side of America, right? I'm at the middle class now and the upper class. So it's versus in Germany, right? I didn't feel that poor, middle class, rich, right? Because in the town where I was, you had Pullman. He was the king of eggs, right? And the guy walked around like a regular farmer, right? There was nothing really. Yeah, he had a little exclusive house, but there was not really. I mean, you knew who had money, who didn't have money, but there was no. Everybody hanged out with each other. So this, and then of course, I mean, there was more to it. But we don't have much time to go open.
Yeah. I like one last question I want to ask you is kind of like relevant to, you've been through a bad time. Like, I mean, some things that are happening now, listening to my father and his experiences growing up in the Middle East, listening to, the stories of my grandparents during World War II. I'm getting scared, and I don't know if I'm just overreacting. I'm just like in a worry war, or is there really something bad happening here? You and your family lived through some perilous times where like one group literally was starting to kill another group of people, and people that were friends, people that intermarried, people that like would never imagine this happening, like your father. So, given the political rhetoric you're seeing here, right? Justified or not, whether the people have, what are you also concerned? And, about, the future of this country and whether we start seeing civil strife, even civil war. I don't even know if that's possible, but, is that concerning to you, with your experiences? And
that's very great question. So see what I've seen in Bosnia from experiences, and also in Germany. When I went through the high school, my major was mathematics and Germany. And history, German history. We really studied mostly the World War I and World War II, and the rise of German Nazi and propaganda they used and rhetoric they used. So I'm very much familiar. And the reasons Germans are teaching that is that it does not repeat itself, right? They want their German citizens understand what happened, what went wrong, what language, what propaganda, what medium has Hitler and his machinery used to convince all Germans to do what they've done. And not all, but convince the majority to go get along, make them believe. And the rhetoric we hear. One thing I saw that was consistent with Nazi Germany and Slobodan Milosevic, and still today, the Serbs are doing it, and even the Serbian Eastern Orthodox Church is repeating it. They're constantly telling lie, and they know that if you tell a lie 10 times, you start believing the lie. And that's what Nazis did. That's what the fascists in Bosnia and the Balkans did. They're still doing it. And that's what, unfortunately, I've seen our former President Trump, do constantly lying. The people start believing lies, and then people don't know what really is true and what's not true. So am I concerned? Yes, I'm concerned, because my dad always says if a war could happen in Bosnia, it can happen anywhere, because he was he had such a strong belief that a war in the environment that he grew up and lived and did his business, did everything, it's impossible to happen, right? Yeah. And I pray to God it will never happen. I really pray to God, especially never anywhere, right? And I don't want it for America, because I still think that America, it's one of the greatest nations in the world. It provides us the freedoms. I've been in Germany. I love Germany, but I was not German in Germany, and I know what it means to be not German. And I'm okay with certain things. Here, I never experienced that. I'm second degree citizens. I didn't experience any phobias. Yes, I'm white. People don't know who I am until they meet me. Similar was in Germany. They didn't know if I was not German or not until I opened my mouth, or what my religion is until they ask me what I am. Same here, right? But here, no matter what, my experiences have been way more positive. And I think we can be who we are and what we want. Actually, I learned more about myself as a Bosnian in America than anywhere else, because of the books, because of the education, because of the freedom I have to do things and explore things without really any repercussions. So I'm very concerned about what's going on, because these guys who believe that there's a deep state, who believe that they were being cheated, right? The Trumpists, and they know what's going on and they have a plan. However, the people that they have planned against have no idea what's going on, right? So tomorrow a guy can come and say, look, you have a vote Democrat in front of you, you're my enemy, and he's going to just kill you. And you're like, why would you kill me? I have not done anything to you. I just have difference in opinions. They don't care, because they have a plan, you have no plan. And I think the worst thing you can happen is, and I've seen it in workplace happening, well, I love them to have the opinion. No, you have to draw a line, right? What's fascism and what's not fascism, and I see lack of ethics and moral values. So, and actually, I was a Republican until recently, and I left Republican Party because there is a serious lack of morale and ethics, that you are supporting a leader that constantly lies and divides the country for personal gain or whatever those gains are, for power, right? And as you know, in our tradition, you should never give a person power who's asking for the power, right? Always give it to the humble guy who's God conscious, who has values, who has ethics, right? And unfortunately, that seems to be escaping. That people are drawing party lines. I see it in Bosnia is happening, same thing. People are voting based on party lines, and the corruption has been just increasing and increasing. And I really hate it to happen here, because we lose something really amazing that we have, and we should preserve that. And I think having these conversations and really saying what's wrong, calling out what's wrong, have courage to say what's wrong, and provide examples why it's wrong. We have to do it, because otherwise, if you allow these guys to have more and more medium, it can spiral down, unfortunately.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think America is an incredible place, and it's incredible because it's built on values.
Yeah.
And I think America's been around long enough where we're forgetting about that. We're just seeing it. Some people, at least in this country, are seeing it as an ethnic identity. But you're right. I can feel like I'm a son of an immigrant, right? You're an immigrant, but we can be American because we agree with the ideals of this country. Yeah. We love it, we appreciate it, and we want to defend it and protect it. And and because we're recent immigrants, we've seen what other life is like, what life is like in other countries around the world, where they don't have these freedoms, where they don't have, individual rights. And, and where societies did degenerate. Like you said, I totally forgot that you studied this history in Germany, understanding, what was that process like, and how can we avoid it? I think that's something we as a nation are still in denial about, that it could happen here. But the truth is, human beings are human beings, whatever country they're in. And, if we want to avoid an inevitable kind of clash, then I think we need to confront this. We need to connect back to those values that make us Americans. And it's a beautiful thing, like you said, you can be born in Germany and raised in Germany, but you're not German, and that's normal for a homogeneous society. But this place is different, as long as you come here and you say, I'm American, you're American, there's no second class American, I mean,
you have to focus on American, because right now what I've seen is people are dividing each other. Americans are dividing each other 7-8 generations based on politics or party lines, which is really sad. Let's agree to disagree on politics, but we're still Americans. We all want to have the same values. Let's support those values. I think we have a great system in place. You just have to maintain it, preserve it.
That's great, man. And I want to, end by talking about something you alluded to and briefly discussed during the interview, and that was the Bay Foundation. Yes. You guys are doing some really cool work trying to keep the memory of this alive, the memory of the Bosnian genocide alive. On one level, I think it's important because, you guys haven't reached closure yet, right? Unlike what happened in Nazi Germany, where, the criminals were brought to trial, they faced justice, and, and then the education system in the country changed such that you're learning what went wrong and how can we avoid this, right? That kind of justice hasn't happened in Bosnia yet. And so, definitely I support your efforts. My wife, I mentioned this to my wife. She's like, oh, that'd be awesome. Maybe we should go. Sure. You got us excited. I would love to. In Bosnia, I've seen the photos. It's a beautiful place. I think it's highly underappreciated.
It's a 9-day trip. Half of it will be cultural experiences. We're going to go visit Sarajevo. We're going to visit Mostar, which is, it's famous for its bridge. Most is a bridge. Yeah. Then we're gonna go visit Počtelj and Buna, which is the Sufi, how you call it? That's cool.
I don't know.
I don't know how to say it in English. Tekia.
A lodge. I think they usually call it Sufi Lodge.
Okay, Sufi Lodge. And then we're gonna go visit Tuzla, and from Tuzla, then next day we're gonna walk the path through mountains. So if somebody is also passionate about cultures and hiking, Bosnia is phenomenal when it comes to natural resources, mountains, rivers. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous. And we're gonna walk through that, and then the third day we're gonna come to Srebrenica. We're gonna participate in an annual commemoration and the burial, and then we're gonna go back to Sarajevo, get some more cultural experiences, and fly back to New York. We're doing 2 packages. One is package from New York to Sarajevo and back, but also another package is if you want to fly on your own, different timeline, and join us there. We have that package as well. But
it was very reasonably priced, right?
Again,
it was very reasonable price, and like $1,500 for
$1,499, including flight and hotel accommodations, and like the travel. We're gonna go there as well.
And you're gonna have somebody kind of guide you through that and explain the history. That's incredible. That's really beautiful.
We're gonna actually have actual survivors tell us their stories, what they have done. Again, the goal is to raise more awareness about it. Share the culture, share the food, share experiences together, and hope to build many more experiences to come. So I hope you can join us if the time allows.
I would love to. What were the dates? What are the dates for this?
The dates are July 5 through July 12, I believe. If you go to beyfoundation.org, beyfoundation.org, and you can see there, there's more information, detailed information, what goes. But yeah, it's July 5. We're going to leave from New York, I believe July 4, and then come back to New York July 12th.
Nice. And I've changed. We've shared the link in the comments on Facebook Live. I'll also include it on YouTube. So wherever I post this video, you'll have access to that information. And is this an annual thing, right?
We're trying to make it annual. It's annual there in Bosnia, but we're trying to make this annual from US, and hopefully grow that to more.
That would be great.
I was once guest here to speak about Bosnian music, and young man in the back. It's like, I went to the Marsh Mira. He participated, an American kid from the suburbs, heard about it, and he went, and he told me how amazing his experience was, which kind of motivated us and inspired us to create this.
That's beautiful. That's incredible. God bless your efforts. And thanks for joining us and sharing your stories. It was really insightful, and really appreciate your time. I'd love to jump on. I want to continue. You brought up some really important points about history and learning from history, and not wanting to lose America to fascism and certain ideas that are starting to become more prevalent. I want to continue this conversation, so kind of keep an eye out for this. I'm hoping to convince you to do it, and then maybe we can kind of meet up somewhere and continue this discussion, because it's an important thing, and I think it requires all of us to do our part. But thank you so much, Mirza, for sharing your time.
Thanks, Jonty. Thanks everybody for listening. Tune in and let me know if you have any questions. You can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. I'll be happy to.
All right, I'll include those links as well.
I appreciate you and your time and the opportunity as well. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day. You too. Bye-bye.
Peace.